Bruce Walkey emailed me a couple of days ago with a query. He's writing something on merism in Genesis, and he wants to know all the places where heaven and earth are mentioned together in the Old Testament using similar vocabulary to that in Genesis 1. Now he knows from editing the Theological Word Book of the Old Testament that this search is harder than you'd think. The Hebrew shemayim, heaven, is regarded by most software as a separate word from shemayin, i.e. the same word but with an Aramaic ending. This is used in Aramaic portions of the Old Testament, so you'd need to search for both forms. James Strong, when he numbered all these words, numbered shemayim as 8064 and shemayin as 8065. And, of course, Bruce's Theological Word Book has different numbers. By the way, Bruce told me that it was his idea to add numbers to the entries, and this became one of the best used features of the Theological Word Book. STEPBible makes it easy to search for either just the Hebrew form, or just the Aramaic, or both at the same time. If you click on heavens, you'll see this word occurs about 460 times. Actually, you see different numbers depending on which Bibles you have open. STEPBible hosts modules from various sources, and they aren't all equally tagged. The number shown is the maximum number in the Bibles that you've selected. You'll notice a triangle next to this. Clicking on this creates a drop-down listing the two different forms in Hebrew and Aramaic, so you can click on one or the other, or on the total at the top to see all of them at once. The word for earth presents more complex problems, as you'll see if you click on it. The drop-down is already open because STEPBible remembers that you wanted to see the drop-down last time. Now these entries are all there for different reasons. Some of them represent the equivalent Aramaic words for the Hebrew one, the word eretz, and some represent sub-meanings. Aramaic for eretz is the similar sounding word arak. Now this sounds rather different to our ears, but in Semitic languages the consonants communicate the vocabulary meaning, while the vowels mainly communicate grammar. So they would hear it much more as similar words. You can see this word if you hover over the line on the list. Then if you click on the number, you'll see all the occurrences, in this case only one, in Jeremiah 10:11. And the little arrow on the left reminds you which word you clicked on. Now we normally expect to see Aramaic in some of the chapters of Daniel and Ezra, but in this case God tells Jeremiah to speak his judgment in Aramaic. Aramaic was like an international version of Hebrew. It was taking over, so Aramaic was like speaking to people in England using American. And this, like American, can sometimes sound more forceful. For example, it sounds more forceful in England if you said, "Get your truck off my yard or I'll see you in court." Which sounds rather different than, "Remove your lorry from my drive or I'll sue you." It's strange how such similar languages can sound different. If you click on the line above the last one, you'll see most common Aramaic equivalent to eretz is ara. Now this sounds very different because we no longer vocalise the final letter ayin. We think it sounded something like a glottal stop, a sound that's common in the north of England, but I won't embarrass myself by attempting it. So the Aramaic ara was like a lazy version of the Aramaic arak, and lazy forms tend to take over. Like everyone now says 21 instead of 21. The Aramaic word ara has a very broad meaning, like the Hebrew eretz. It can mean the planet Earth. It can also mean the earth or soil on the ground, or even a country, as in Eretz Israel. STEPBible differentiates meanings when they're significantly different. So you can search for every time that Eretz or Ara are used in a sense of soil, or every time it's used with the meaning of land or planet. Now those last two aren't distinguished in STEPBible because it can be difficult to decide which meaning is intended in which text, but the sub-meaning for soil is much more distinct. In Aramaic, another new word was beginning to form. That's the word Ari. This is spelled very similar to Ara, just with a small yod added. But modern lexicons agree that this was a separate word which was starting to differentiate with a distinct meaning. And if you click on the number next to it, which again is a 1, you'll see it occurs only when Daniel was thrown to the bottom of the lion pit. Okay, with all this complexity, how do we find places where similar vocabulary to heaven and earth in Genesis 1 occur together in the rest of the Bible? We will have to look for verses where Shemayim or Shemayin occurs together with Eretz or Arak or Ara or Ari. That's 2 times 4, that's 8 separate combinations of words. In STEPBible, this is easy. Click on the search button and type heaven. Then click on the Hebrew Shemayim, etc. It says etc. because this includes all the forms of the Hebrew and Aramaic. If you want to find just one of them, then you click on 2 forms and pick the one you want. Though we want to have all 400 odd occurrences and to find them all and compare them to Eretz. So now we want to search for those verses which have any form of Eretz, Arak, Ara or Ari. So click on the search button and again type earth. But this time, before clicking on anything, select verses from previous searches at the bottom. This will make it search only within your previous results, i.e. it will only look in verses that already contain Shemayim, etc. Before clicking on it, you might want to scroll down and review what it's about to do. When you click on Eretz, etc., it will search verses from previous searches that also include the above, i.e. Eretz, etc., and Hebrew Shemayim or Hebrew Shemayin. Okay, that last bit is technically wrong because Shemayin is an Aramaic word, but not everyone needs that level of detail. At this point, we can change the and or the or to something else if we want. If you click on the and drop down, you could pick or instead, i.e. plus those including the above. You could pick not, i.e. that don't include the above. Of course, we do want the first one because we want earth and heaven in the same verse. We could also change Shemayim or Shemayin to and or not. This takes some thinking about what would actually happen. We want verses that have any form of earth and any of the forms of heaven. Now, if we asked for Shemayim and Shemayin, we'd be looking for verses that have earth with both forms of the word for heaven. Or if we asked for Shemayim not Shemayin, we'd be asking for verses with only the first form and not the second. So in the end we decide we want or, which was already picked for us, which will find any form of Eretz with any form of Shemayim. So finally we click on Eretz, etc., and we have a list of all the verses we wanted. Actually, of course, this took much longer than we needed because we overthought everything. The default was what we wanted, and you'll find that STEPBible usually does correctly predict what you want. All we needed to do was search for heavens and click on Shemayim, etc. Then search for earth, turn on verses from previous searches, and click on Eretz, etc. Now I knew that Bruce wanted the results in Hebrew, so I deselected the other Bibles by clicking on the Bible button and unhighlighting them. Then I copied the results into an email. This is easy with the copy button. You click it, then select the first verse number and the last one, and you've got it, ready to paste anywhere with Ctrl+V. Bruce replied very quickly, "It amazed me! Your list contains many more verses." In other words, he'd already made his own attempt to find these verses before emailing me. Well, I'm afraid I must confess I didn't own up how easy it was to make a better list. Enjoy yourselves.